Okay, thanks everyone for joining us here today. This is the Uptake of Digital Research Infrastructure Interest Group. It's an RDA group. Today's session we've titled The First Steps Towards Measuring the Uptake of Digital Research Infrastructure. I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners, the Turrbal and Yugara people of the land that we're meeting on today in Brisbane, Meanjin, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. For me, I'm visiting from Melbourne, Naarm, and I'd also like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people as the traditional custodians of the lands and waterways in that area. I'd also like to welcome all the new RDA members who are joining us here today for the first time. RDA has 6 guiding principles at the heart of the RDA community, and if you'd like to know more and read more about those principles, please head over to the RDA website. Okay, so just some housekeeping for today. Welcome everyone, come and find a seat. Please sign in to the collaborative notes. The QR code is there, or there's also the tiny URL. The document also includes all the links to slides and some of the other work that we've been involved in over the last year or so. And the collaborative notes, we're really hoping that you can contribute today. Comments, questions, feedback are all welcome. When you're asking questions in today's session, please introduce yourself, your name, your organisation, and where you're visiting from. So this group has 3 co-chairs. We are all from ARDC, and we'd actually not like that to be so. So we are on the hunt for co-chairs from other countries with an interest in the uptake of digital research infrastructure. So come and chat to me and Stefanie this afternoon if you're interested in joining and enjoy this session. So I've got Stefanie Kethers in the front here with me. I'm Liv Shanahan, and our third co-chair is Kylie. She can't be here with us today because she's representing Australia at the World Aqua Bike Championships in Wollongong. So if you know Kylie, she's racing tomorrow. Send her a text. Cheer her on. We're all thinking of her. Okay, so today's agenda, we just got some welcomes and introductions and a brief background to the group, and we'll just talk a little bit about where we're at with the group status, the roadmap, summary of some of the connections we have with other RDA groups, and some current work that we've been working on, including the collection and feedback on definitions and the survey design. And then Stefanie is going to take us through the working session, which will be around further development of the survey. Okay, so why form an interest group on digital research infrastructure uptake? Let's start with what we know. So many countries across the globe are investing heavily in digital research infrastructure because it's fundamental to their research efforts. But the critical question or questions are, what's the evidence that these infrastructures are being used and used effectively? So understanding uptake, who's using this infrastructure, how they're using it, and what they're using it for is of interest to our group, and it tells us whether we're meeting researcher needs, where the barriers are, and what opportunities we're missing. And I think it's really important here to say that equally important is understanding why infrastructure isn't being used. These gaps matter because they represent lost opportunities and unrealised returns on often considerable public and private investment. We know that digital research infrastructure means different things depending on where you sit, but understanding uptake matters to all of us across the community. So when we understand uptake properly, everyone benefits. Researchers get infrastructure that actually works for their needs, with barriers removed and better support. Funders can justify investments with solid evidence and make compelling cases for future investment. And providers and operators can demonstrate how their infrastructure enables researchers to tackle the big societal challenges that we all care about. So I guess the reality is simple. Unused infrastructure delivers no impact, regardless of how much was invested, how well it's built, or how important the research challenge is. So this working group hopes to bring together funders, providers, operators, and researchers to understand what drives adoption from every angle and ensure digital research infrastructure actually delivers the outcomes we're working towards. So the group has grown from 4 people to about 42 people registered through the RDA website, and we have a couple of handfuls of people who turn up to all of our sessions and provide input regularly. And I'd like to just reach out to Trish, who's in the front row today, because she's been instrumental in reaching out to our local communities and getting people involved, and so thank you very much. We've been active since P21, and we've had sessions at every plenary since, and I'll talk a little bit more about that soon. And our group was formally endorsed in January this year, and our statement of work is now available on the RDA website. So this is the summary of our statement of work. So we have 6 key outputs that we're hoping to achieve over the next couple of years. The first output is defining some of the key concepts. So what is uptake? What is DRI? And we're almost there, and we're hoping to finalise those today. The second output is around the environmental scan and literature review. So we've set up a Zotero library. If you have documents that you think this group would benefit from looking at, please add them to the Zotero library and let us know. Today we're going to be working on the survey of users of DRI, and that's one of our larger outputs that we're hoping to achieve by the next plenary. We're also looking to deliver a typology of categories of DRI, working closely with other RDA groups, and a catalogue of qualitative and quantitative measures of uptake. And finally, we're hoping to develop recommendations delivered at P28 that will hopefully address some of the questions around funders, providers and users of DRI. We've got 3 key outcomes that we're hoping to achieve through the delivery of those outputs, most notably, I guess, an agreed model of understanding DRI, higher quality evaluations, and then the understanding, a key step in the pathway between DRI outputs, outcomes, and longer-term impact. So this is just a visual summary of where we're at. So we're at P25 today. We're hoping to finalise those definitions by P26, finish the survey, by P27 have categories of DRI established and measures, both qualitative and quantitative, and then delivering those recommendations. And the environmental scan and literature review is something that is ongoing and will underpin a lot of that work. In terms of status of where everything's at, key definitions, we've got the final drafts. We'll be asking for feedback today. The survey of different user groups, personas have been defined and the first set of questions drafted, and we'll go into that a little bit more today. The typology of the categories and the catalogue of qualitative measures and quantitative measures we've done some initial brainstorming through the group, but further work will be informed by the survey. The Zotero library is available, so please add anything into that if you want, and then the recommendations hasn't yet been started. So we do have a number of connections with other RDA groups. The Evaluation of Research Interest Group, I think we share some commonalities around measures and metrics, both qualitative and quantitative. And I know the Evaluation of Research Interest Group has a session tomorrow, I think just after lunch, so I encourage you all to go to that as well. The GORC group and MaLDReTH share commonalities around DRI categorisation and relevance to different types of DRI. And then also with MaLDReTH, we're interested in DRI use cases. If there are other groups that you think we should be involved in or with, please let us know, because we're always looking at how we can reduce duplication of work across each of the groups. I'm going to hand over to Stefanie now.
Thanks, Liv. That was a bit of a whirlwind tour. Any questions or comments? No? Good. I'm going to put you on the spot, Emma. Do you want to say anything about the Evaluation of Research Interest Group at this point? If not, that's fine too. If you do, then I'd ask Kevin to get you the microphone. Sorry? No? Okay.
Probably not.
Okay. But your session is tomorrow?
Yeah, 1:30.
1:30 p.m. Brisbane time. Okay, thank you very much. All right. So one thing we wanted to do today was talk a bit about some of the definitions that we've worked with a variety of people on over the last little while through our group meetings. So one thing, when we looked at the Australian National Digital Research Infrastructure Strategy, I think it's called, we noticed that in the previous versions, there actually wasn't a good definition of what digital research infrastructure actually is, which was interesting. We looked at a couple of others from Canada in particular and from Europe, and we also had discussions in the group. And what we came up with in the end is the definition that's now currently on the screen. So DRI encompasses policy and governance, together with the tools, services, facilities, and support that enable researchers excuse me, to curate, process, analyze, and or share data efficiently. And it does include people, skills, and knowledge involved in the DRI. So there's a couple of things to unpack there. We didn't want it to be just a technical thing. So we think even though people are not digital, they're part of the digital research infrastructure, because without the people supporting it, knowing about it, using it, etc., that's just not going to work. One of the questions we haven't resolved so far, and we would be really keen on your input, is does a digital research infrastructure, does one of the functions curate, process, analyze, share data, should that include creating data? And we ended up with a discussion, and we didn't come to a full conclusion. So we would be really keen on hearing from you what your thoughts are. And this is the point, Kevin, where I think you may have to wander around with the microphone, if you wouldn't mind. Okay. Yep.
Well, maybe yes, because...
Hang on. Can you use the mic,
sorry.
just because we have people online? And would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah,
Wonderful,
my name is
you.
Liz Izquierdo, and I'm asset manager of a biobank, Autism CRC biobank, here in Brisbane. And I think if I have 2 minutes there, I can create data from the data that originally was collected. So in that sense, yes, because that implies a lot of things that I have to put in place, creating metadata, making it available, sharing, and so on. However, if that data came initially from a research project, and that I just adding, that should be coming directly to that. So it might be important to consider if it's original data or preparing new data sets with the initial data you have.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks very much. Joe, yeah?
Yes, I'm Jo Morris. I'm the program manager from ARDC, working on the Planet Research Data Commons, and my area I'm looking after is infrastructure. I have a number of projects that are creating data that we are building enduring infrastructure. So those projects in particular are using AI to process machine observation data. And so they're extracting data, I guess, and creating new data sets out of things like images from camera traps. So yes, I definitely do think it should include creating data.
Okay, thanks very much. There's the gentleman behind you.
Hello, thank you for the opportunity. My name is Gavin Chow from RMIT. I'm currently working for a digital infrastructuralization, like platform stickiness, this and that. To the question, I think yes. And depending on the platform, depending on the environment as well, if the different users group are contributing to the platform and those data actually become part of the platform and becoming part of the environment. So yeah, if from that perspective, I think we definitely need to consider about the entire data situation.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. So, any other comments? Yep, right next behind you, Kevin. Sorry.
Thank you. Catherine Tattersall from CSIRO Marine Research, but the Marine National Facility. when I've talked about digital research infrastructure, I've always separated it from the creation of data, and that's because often the way that data is created is mediated by the research community, and that is often a different community to the people who are designing the digital infrastructure and who are designing the systems that manage the data. So I don't have a strong opinion, and I'm not pushing back against the opinions we've heard, but that is how I've defined it for myself.
Okay, thanks, Kat.
Thank you. Sverker Holmgren, Chalmers University of Technology, Sweden. I am the director of something that is called Digital Research Infrastructure. I think it's important to realize that if creating data is included in this definition, I think all research infrastructures will be a digital research infrastructure. And that might not be wrong, but still I think it's an important comment in that sense.
And that was exactly the point that was made in the group sessions that we had, that then pretty much everything is digital research infrastructure, So maybe the question is, I'll come back to you in a second. Maybe the question is, how can we clarify it and not just stick create as a verb there? How can we clarify what we mean? How can we cover that case without broadening it to anything, really? Yep. First the gentleman in front, and then, thank you.
Mark Easton from RMIT. I guess two things. I think there is data which is created digitally, which would be included, and maybe other data wouldn't be included. The other thing that I'm interested here is you don't have the word compute in here. And if I've had this discussion with my Dean of Computer Technology, who says that DRI is fundamentally about compute and compute tools rather than data seconds. So that's just a comment here.
So just to respond to that, so we have analyzed. So you think that is not enough? You would prefer compute as a separate word in there?
That's my reflection from my discussion with the Dean.
Okay.
That's what they would say.
Okay. So just to repeat that for the online people, so your Dean would basically say that's not enough. We would need to include compute. Okay, thanks.
Hi, my name is Becky Grady from the California Digital Library. I'm very new to this group. I'm seeing this definition for the first time, and just in terms of your question about how to define it, I can tell you as an outsider who is reading this for the first time, I don't think I would have assumed that the definition on the board includes creating data. So when I read what it says about curate, process, analyze, and/or share data efficiently, it seems to me like it already excludes the creation of data and might not need a change if that's what you end up going for.
Okay, so as I said, we had the discussion in the group and we decided to leave it out for now, but we wanted to bring it to a bigger group to see if we should include it, because there were certainly two strong opinions held.
Just a quick comment about compute also. So in our infrastructure it is included, but our definition is almost like that one.
Okay.
And it's then included through the word analyze.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. That's what we had hoped for as well, but it's always good to see how different people have different lenses on it. Yeah. Trish? Oh, sorry.
This is from online, from Francoise Geneva, who's joining us online. My point on that was that a telescope, which creates data, is not, for me, a DRI. However, it does have all the other characteristics from the definition. So,
Yes, and that was actually exactly the discussion we had. So thanks, Francoise, and thanks for joining us at this inconvenient hour for you.
I'm Emma from the Australian Research Data Commons, and hi, Francois online. She is one of the co-chairs of the Evaluation of Research Interest Group. This might sound a little bit basic, but it might go to answering one of the points that Francois just made online, and also to Mark's point before. One thing to me that seems to be missing is actually digital. Okay. So I know that we're talking about DRI in the framework, but I wonder if it's worthwhile pulling that out a little bit further in the definition, and that might help differentiate between the creating data element.
You know, that is brilliant, because we've been looking at this definition and we hadn't copped onto that. So thank
I
you.
thought I was too obvious, but that's good.
Okay, so, and that was actually part of, so what I was thinking of, if we just leave it at, if we just bunk create in there, that'll create all those problems. But if we include the fact that we're talking about digital data here, would that mitigate this particular issue? Sorry? Did you want to say anything? Sorry, I didn't catch your name, even though you said it. No, behind you.
So, trying to respond to that question, Sverker Holmgren again from Chalmers. I don't think it will resolve that question, really.
Okay.
But it can help, but it's really this, all research infrastructures are becoming digital in one way or another today. So how to deal with that, I don't know, but I think it's important to realize.
Okay. All right. So I think the consensus is that we need to tackle create in some way, shape or form. That doesn't make it all-encompassing. So we'll have a bit of a think. We will do a final post at some point on the group with the definition as it will be then, based on the discussion here. Ryan, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, so Ryan McAllister, sorry. I guess for me, the question is, what happens to the created data? So does it become an asset, or is it created and then moved on? So I think like an economist, like it's a capital asset. So that question is kind of critical.
Okay. Yep, thanks. We will consider that as well. In the interest of time, we'll go to the next one. Okay, and that is a very lengthy definition of uptake. I'll leave that on for a moment and let you read it. So just to explain why we have this lengthy list of things or list of dimensions of uptake, as we think they are, a lot of the time uptake is reduced to numbers, and we don't think that is actually super helpful, because if you have a digital research infrastructure that 100,000 people use to draw pretty maps, that is presumably not as good as having a digital infrastructure with 20 users that cure cancer. So there is a lot about, it's not just the number of users, the number of downloads, the number of jobs run that is relevant when you look at uptake, or the percentage of people using it. I'll come to you in a second. So through some discussions in the group, we've come up with those different aspects or dimensions of uptake. So how well is it integrated into research workflows? So how well is the usage of this digital research infrastructure actually incorporated into research workflows? How easy is it to collaborate and share data through the DRI? What outputs, research outputs are produced, traditional, non-traditional? How easy is it to do that? Innovation and efficiency, the idea is how does this enable faster, more efficient research, capacity building, so the support of the use of DRI. If there's a DRI that has absolutely no documentation, no training, nothing, then that's harder for people to actually take up than if there is a really good training program and capacity building program around it. And one other thing is, so policy and investment support with the infrastructure we built in some of our projects, or have built in some of our projects. The problem is there's funding for a couple of years and then the funding goes away. And then if someone uses that infrastructure and this infrastructure goes away, that is actually not really great, neither for them nor for the infrastructure, but certainly not for the user that spends some time getting their data into it, learning how it works, using it and all that, and then it goes away. So another thing that we think helps define uptake is this actually supported long term? Is there a sustainability plan, and who actually sustains it? So these are a bunch of dimensions that we thought of. We would be interested in your thoughts also in others, and there was sorry, just to provide a bit of context. Thanks.
Yes, of course. So I'm Becky Grady again. Yeah, I mean, I think all of these make sense. They're all interesting, and they do seem like they kind of fall into a couple categories the way I read them, and I'm kind of surprised to see them all in a single list, you know, because some of them are more about the usage, you know, it's obviously the usage, integration, and then some of them seem more like predictors of usage. And so things like support and capacity building and investment, those are things that seem like they would lead to more usage, you know, potentially, but that's like a category that comes before. And then things like innovation and efficiency, to me, that's like an even later outcome. That like, I wouldn't have thought of that as uptake. I would have thought of that as the outcome of uptake, is that's what we should expect to see. And so it's almost like three phases I see. You know, it's like, okay, these are the things that are that are needed to get there. These are like how much people are using it, and these are the outcomes, as opposed to like every one of these being within the same category of uptake.
I'll just respond to that, and then I'll come to you, Joe. So just the example with the policy and investment support, what we thought about, okay, so we thought about these different dimensions from different personas, and we'll come to different personas. So, for example, like if you look at it with a funding lens, policy and investment support is something that if a infrastructure is not sustained further, it hasn't been taken up by a funder or something like that. So it's uptake on not just on the part of the users, but also on part of some of the other groups. I don't know if that's making sense. Yeah. Okay. We'll try to explain that a little bit more. And I'm actually not sure if it does make sense. So tell me if it doesn't. But that's how we arrived at some of those. Joe.
I'm just kicking off a review of our current infrastructure that's operational, and uptake is quite hard to measure. Like, you can measure numbers of users using a service or infrastructure, but you need to put it into some context. So one of the things I've addressed in the review evaluation report that I've done for the first infrastructure is to try and analyse what the serviceable addressable market for that infrastructure would be. So that's the likely market that the maximum market or number of users that could use that service. And then you put your user metrics into that, and you say you've got 50% of that market already or not. Other things that we're looking at is obviously contract performance, against deliverables and timelines, governance and operational effectiveness of that infrastructure, impact analysis, which is including research translation, economic benefits and stakeholder engagement, and then strategic alignment with the organisations that are obviously funding it.
Thanks. And it seems like we should talk more. Sorry, Kevin, at the front.
Kelsey Jerkin, Access NRI, one of the research infrastructures here in Australia. We support climate modelling. A few things, I agree with the earlier comment about a few, like the different phases and
different stages. Yes.
Yeah, I think that would definitely lead to sort of a punchier message on a few of these. Just a few comments of things that I think are very important to highlight that might be considered to weave in terms of infrastructures. That reuse factor, I think, is a real, especially your example with, numbers don't always show the full story. What are the derivative, reuse cases or things that lead from infrastructure, and how do we measure that, or how do we just articulate that actually is an enduring benefit? And also, I think the data or the infrastructure capability, integrity, the quality, the trust. I feel like those things really are becoming more and more visible and recognized, especially from general public, and is a really important aspect with infrastructures to help promote that, this coordination. Those are some benefits.
Okay, thanks very much. And there's a comment right at the back. Sorry, Kevin, you're getting a lot of exercise.
Thank you. Catherine Syro. There are 2 points I'd like to comment on. The first is the third point, so facilitation of collaboration and data sharing through digital research infrastructure. And then across disciplines is specified there. I think facilitation is very hard to measure, but delivery of data into either other repositories or agreements with other repositories, so perhaps refining the language there would help. And I think across disciplines is unnecessarily and perhaps counter-constructive even, because there are a lot of conversation at this meeting about aggregation of data and use of interoperable data. I think that there's a lot of data that we publish to international aggregators. It becomes very hard to measure onward use from that point, but we could say this is how much data we're pushing in here, and then... So that's the first. The second was around innovation and efficiency by enabling faster, more efficient research. I think we can't measure how efficient we've made research, but we can make faster, more efficient data access or perhaps something that's easier to measure than more efficient research.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a good point.
One thing that it might be important is the development of very good metadata and catalogue that are quite visible in key places, like a GRF or a DRSC, because that makes people to go there. But also the possibility to have spaces where you can have a lot of tools where you can analyze data. I think that could be quite restricted if you don't have that, to be able to upload your data there and then people can't access those tools. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks. And
thank you. Alona Stawitsky-Syro. Probably linking back to some of the earlier comments about categorising these. So I struggle with the word uptake, because what you seem to be listing is a range of measures along an impact pathway. And so the discussion about at which point are you measuring, like, is it the delivery or the seamless connection of the data versus actually having an impact on the speed of research or an impact on capacity building. And so I don't know if everyone's more comfortable with using uptake as a word to describe all of that range of impact, but I do think segregating it and grouping it so that you're more... I think we always fall into the trap, which is what you're trying to tackle, about measuring what's easy to measure. Whereas we really care much more about those impacts further down, which is where I think you're trying to get to. Yeah. But I just struggle with the word uptake to capture all of that, and with having a list versus sort of a structuring of it.
Yes, and I have to say, during this discussion, I'm starting to visualize what that could look like for me, which may not be what it looks like for everyone else. Just to give a little bit of context, and I think we're actually... We're coming full circle. We started out with a group where we wanted to talk about impact, but we thought, okay, before we go to impact, we actually have to understand some of the precursors, and one of those precursors is uptake. So we started there, but I think mentally we're still sort of caught in that particular thought. So I think I really like the idea of having... Yes, I'm going to be doing it with my hands, but I really like the idea of having, like, as you said, an impact pathway or a pathway with, say, uptake relatively early on, and then other things coming on dependent on uptake, of course, but not the same thing, and having a bit of a from here to there, from uptake to impact, and have a bit of a spectrum maybe, or a flow. I don't know, something like that. Is that roughly something that would resonate with people? And I don't know exactly what that would look like, because I'm terrible at visualizing things like that, but we could sort of have a bit of a brainstorming through the group. But I think the general idea that what we have there are important aspects, but not necessarily all at the same time and of the same thing, is probably what I'm hearing. Frankie?
Hi, Frankie Stevens, independent consultant in research infrastructure services. I really like that idea, Stefanie. I think that if you start with uptake and end at impact, there are obviously multiple steps in between, and actually having those better defined give research infrastructure entities actual targeted spaces in which they can measure their sort of maturity or even improve in this particular block, because that's where we're failing to get people on board. Or I really like that.
Yeah, I actually do like it too. I think what we might do, and this is just me saying that, so my other co-chairs might have something to say about that, but maybe what we'll do is basically share through the group. So if you haven't joined our group, please feel free to join it. We'll share through the group like some very early nebulous draft, and then we can maybe all work on that and refine it. Because I think if we do that here, that's probably not going to be the most efficient use of time. But I think that's actually a really, really good way of doing it. And it's one thing that I think we've struggled with for a long time, sort of thinking about uptake and drawing some kind of boundary around it, but not quite right. So I think having this continuum, I think continuum is a better word, that would be a very helpful thing. And as Frankie said, if we can come up with proper definitions that show what each of these is, that might actually be a helpful thing. So that could be a nice first output. Thanks. Emma?
Are we still on the conversation of uptake? I don't want to keep, if you've got more to go on with. So for online, Emma, ARDC. One thing that I was thinking about when we're talking about uptake and the use measure in particular is actually thinking about human users versus machine users. Yep. So one thing that Liv would actually be familiar with measuring usage of one of the ARDC's infrastructures, we had a very overinflated number and realised that that was actually due to machine learning. And so, yeah, just thinking about what's the use of the infrastructure by human users versus machine learning. Yeah. Yeah.
And we don't have that in here at the moment, because even under use of DRI, we talk about researchers, policymakers and others, but not things. Yeah.
I think it's really important to get some qualitative measures as well from users, because a lot of the times we measure unique users logging into infrastructure, but if they don't return, repeat users are good to measure, but also their satisfaction with the infrastructure is really good to measure as well.
Yeah, and I think if you look at some of the things there, they are really hard to measure. Like, how do you measure, as someone said, facilitation? That's a qualitative thing. That's in the eye of the beholder, whether that's good or bad or sufficient or insufficient. So yeah, I agree. And I actually, the whole idea for this whole group a couple of years ago came because I got frustrated by having to think about user numbers, and that was all people wanted to know about. So I thought that can't be the whole story. So it sort of went from there. Okay, so I think Liv has been taking copious notes, which is great. So we will do some work on this, come up with something like a blank canvas and maybe a couple of ideas, and then we'll share that with the group and hopefully get more of your valuable feedback, because that has been extremely useful and extremely helpful. So thanks. So Another thing, so Liv has said before, what we want to do is run a survey. So we want to ask of different, we call them personas, of different groups of people or stakeholders, although it's not a great word, groups of different key parties involved in digital research infrastructure. We want to understand their perspectives and what kinds of things they see as uptake, and what kinds of things we would want to ask them about uptake. Now, this is a list of different personas that we have come up with. I think a couple will probably be relatively straightforward. So we think having researchers as a group is important because for most digital research infrastructure, researchers are hopefully the main user group or the main group of people making use of the digital research infrastructure. We also have research support staff, and that could be librarians, could be data scientists, other data professionals supporting the researchers or supporting research. We also have policymakers because they are also often, hopefully, or should be users of digital research infrastructure. But so one of the projects I'm currently looking after at the ARDC is a food security related project on biosecurity, which Rob knows a lot about as well. And the idea there is to make a digital research infrastructure, in this case biosecurity commons, and provide models and tools for decision makers in animal disease outbreaks. When people don't have time to do stuff, they just need to be able to access tools and make decisions very quickly. But at the moment, they're not necessarily doing that. So how do we enable them to use tools like that in a way that works for them and in a way that actually fits with the needs that they have when there is an outbreak of avian influenza or whatever? So policymakers, we kept them separate from researchers because we think they have different needs. We also have put in there funders, or as ARDC doesn't use the F word, in co-investors, trainers, so people who train people on about digital research infrastructure. That was a suggestion from a previous plenary session. Providers, so those who actually run and provide the infrastructures. Someone also suggested DRI implementers, and there will be overlap between some of those. But these were the personas that we have come up with. So again, we'd be very interested in hearing your thoughts. Do these make sense? Is there anything significant missing? Okay, Ryan first.
A context question. Probably you've got a microphone, but when you say implementers,
yeah.
I mean, I think of digital products and businesses and digital businesses. Are they implementers? Is that what you mean there, or?
I think the person who suggested it actually thought of the people who are like developing, like doing the technical work on it, like implementing the actual tool, software, whatever it is. But
okay.
That's actually a very good point.
Well, that'll be my comment then, because I think that's the one gap I see. Yeah.
Okay. So what did you call them?
Digital businesses.
Digital businesses?
Products. You know, companies that offer solutions that require data streams.
Yep. Okay. So yeah, we can call them digital businesses. That's significantly separate. I wouldn't call them implementers because that'll just confuse it. Yeah, thanks. Joe?
Me again. So we haven't got users in there.
So with users, okay, we've split up the users into definitely researchers and policymakers.
Okay.
So,
and the other thing, what about government and industry?
Okay, so...
Because example of that you use biosecurity commons,
yes.
we do, you know, I mean, they can be classified as users. But.
Yeah, so, okay, I think we probably stuck them under policymakers, which is probably not quite correct. Emma?
I had the same thought about industry. Mm-hmm. And I'm also thinking about citizen science, scientists and end users. So thinking about a platform like Trove, for example, which is utilised by the public. Yep. So yeah, I do think there probably needs to be a few more. And also researchers, can be researchers in industry, but there can also be industry users outside of that. Think of Research Link Australia, for example, trying to...
And researchers can be in government and can be working with policymakers or can be policymakers. Okay, so, sorry, Rob, before we come to you, so it sounds like we should have a category users with subcategories, researchers, policymakers, industry, government. Is that about it? Sorry, general public? Yeah. Rob?
So, Rob Clemens, ARDC. So with Biosecurity Commons as an example, so we've split them into operations folks. So I mean, you've got to consider the audience that we're building these digital translation tools for, and they're probably not encompassed by these, but you could go really, really granular and lose yourself in the granularity, but yeah, you do need to pick up those users who are looking at the data products and utilizing them to... So they're not necessarily the decision makers, but you've got the decision makers and then you've got the operations folks.
Okay, thanks. And right at the back. And then we come to you.
So Sverker Holmgren, Chalmers again. So I think this is a very interesting discussion and we have been looking into it also. So I have a few comments. I think I like this idea of users and subcategories. I think that is a good thing. The DRI personas there, I think one needs to think about that. So DRI trainer, what is that? It is a person that trains a DRI staff, or is it training the users? Or I think that needs to be clear.
Yeah, I think that was the person mentioning it was one of the people who actually provide training about a DRI to potential users.
Yeah, okay. So there's internal training that needs to be covered also probably. DRI researcher, that's also, what is that? Is it a researcher that develops the research infrastructure, or is it...
No, that was actually people who do research about digital infrastructures and how to improve, how to improve them, for example, or to understand frameworks and things like that. So that was probably a small category, but it does exist.
Sure, I agree, but there is a floating area there where you come to actually the researchers that do the research using the infrastructure and developing it, and that is something that has been discussed quite a lot, I think, both nationally and in Europe. Very interesting. Maybe I want to comment more later.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Any? Oh yeah, sorry. No, sorry, actually, first here and then.
Teachers, educators, where would you fit them?
Well, they're not there yet. So, yeah. I mean, they could be a subcategory of users, but they are not at the moment there, so we should add them. Yeah, thanks.
Alona from Saro. Again, this discussion seems to link back to the previous one, because I think I like the idea of thinking about personas. I think the different people and roles there are in different parts of your uptake impact pathway. And if you're going to survey them, I wouldn't think you'd ask them all the same questions.
No,
is where I was getting to. And I think the point made on the Biosecurity Commons one was an example I was thinking of, because within policymakers, you have put, it sounds a bit like it's grouped everyone within a policy department from the operational teams, the experts and the decision makers. And so there is a complexity there that you might want to think through, and I like the idea of end users, but I like the idea of these different roles. But so I feel like I don't want to feel like I'm complicating your list, but I also feel like it might be worthwhile looking at it again when you've had a reflection on the uptake versus impact.
Yep, I agree. And just the thing that we want, or one of the things we wanted to do with you today was actually look at what kinds of questions would we ask these personas, because I absolutely agree we would not be asking them the same questions because they have different roles and they have different aspects that we can ask them about. There's no point asking the funders some of the questions about the users. And in fact, that's actually not a good thing to do because they wouldn't know and they would just falsify the results. Any other comments? Anything from online?
Yeah, sorry. Just a quick one. It's Trish again from the RDA. Francoise online just said general users as one of the categories.
So just to clarify, general users meaning the general public, like just normal people in quotes?
General public user.
Yes. Okay. So that was brought up as well, and that I think Emma said citizen scientists, but I think we can broaden it to general public without sort of diminishing that. Yeah. Okay. Yes. So we will include that. Thanks, Françoise. Okay. So what we wanted to do then, and that's where we will go in a minute to the collaborative notes document, and I may have to call our AV person for help. But anyway, so we wanted to look at what kinds of things would we ask some of those people around those aspects, bearing in mind the discussion we've just had. So we haven't been able to update that in the document, but we will, that will happen. So we would like to do a bit of a brainstorming exercise in the collaborative notes document, which we'll put up again in a minute, and ask you, okay, what kinds of things do you think a survey aiming at finding out about uptake, and with all the discussion we've had from uptake to impact, what kinds of things should we ask those different personas about their involvement with digital research infrastructure? So, given that probably not everyone has a laptop here, so if you do have one, or if you are able to edit the collaborative notes document, it would be great if you could. But what we'll do in a minute is we'll share the notes document on screen, and we can also have a verbal discussion and enter stuff into the collaborative notes document as well. But if you have things that you can, if you can edit the document and enter things into it, that would be fantastic. Also for the online people, if you could write your contributions into the collaborative notes document, that would be fantastic. Sorry? Page 6, I'm told. Okay. Oh, that's, yeah, because the first bit is some RDA administrative context, and then there's the sign-in sheet, and then further at the back we have the questions. Okay. I'll just leave that on for a minute, and then we can go there, I hope. Are you okay? I'll tap right. Okay, let's scroll down. Sorry? Okay, just give me 1 sec. I'm just scrolling there. So this is, I think, as Liv said, page 6. So we have basically put there the different dimensions that we just talked about. So use of DRI, integration of DRI into research workflows, facilitation of collaboration, etc. So each of those is there, and each of those Sorry, this mouse is absolutely awful. Has the different personas that we talked about without the ones that we just talked about. So this is our original list, and we may have to adjust that a bit. So, for example, add general public and educators. So what we would like to do is ask you to suggest questions that you think would be useful to ask these particular user groups. And we've put those different categories there because that might make it a little bit easier. So under use of GRI, is there anything you would like to ask, or that you think we should ask in our survey? Okay, sorry, I'll just won't touch that. We're not talking about pubs. What are the questions you think we should ask in our survey of these different user groups? Possibly under those different categories, but again, with bearing in mind that we will be adjusting those. Does that make sense? So I'll probably be scrolling up and down madly because there are several of those categories, as you've seen. But also, as I said, because probably not everyone will be able to get into the document if you haven't got a device with you, we'll also do a verbal discussion. So happy to take verbal input as well, which we will then add to the document. Yeah, that is a very good question. How do we track secondary, tertiary use of data products? I wish we knew. Yep. So a question for users here, how did you discover the DRI? Which would also help with working out ways of making sure people know about it. Yeah, what do you use it for? Mm-hmm. And you don't have to do it sort of starting from usage all the way down, so you can pick whichever categories or aspects you would like and just enter your thoughts. Also, if you'd like to contribute verbally, just put up your hand and I'm sure Kevin will hand you the microphone. So I like that one about what are common user questions, what type of training could assist with answering these questions, because you could have a sort of a mirroring question for the trainers. What do you actually, what do you provide in terms of training? And then you could see actually, does this map, does this actually answer the user questions or not? Or is the training aligned with what the users want and need? Sorry, I'll just be adding, I'll just be moving things a little bit just to make it a little bit clearer, but not changing the content. I think with industry, probably one of the questions is also whether industry users actually had to pay for it, because a lot of infrastructure, research infrastructure is free for researchers, but may not be free for industry users. And how do you get them to pay for it? Yes, Joe, exactly. Okay, that's a good one. So under government, do you have the information you need to establish return on investment on the DRI? And that is, I find that interesting because, as I said, as ARDC, we are reporting on our KPIs, sorry, not traumatizing you, Liv, hopefully, to the Department of Education. And I'm not always sure that what we report is really the best, like the most useful thing. But I mean, I don't know what they really do with it, but if it was me, I think I would want to know some other things rather than just numbers. But anyway, so again, there's the question, what do you want to know and what do you actually ask? And are you getting that information that you need back from your, from the DRIs, for example? And we are sort of, as ARDC, we are the middle people between, because we don't necessarily run the infrastructures. The projects that we've co-invested in run the infrastructure. So we ask them for their information and then we collate it and send it to the department. But is that actually, does that actually give the information that's needed? And is it collecting the information that's needed? Okay, so the general public question, do you have any data of your own to share with DRI? So that's, for example, like the Atlas of Living Australia's iNaturalist or something like that, where people upload their reporting, of species or animals or plants. That's probably what's meant there then, yep. Mm-hmm. So in a way, I guess the question for industry, how easy was it for you to access the DRI? That's also for the general public, I would think, because ease of access, I think, I mean, as a researcher, if the digital research infrastructure is something you really, really need, you'll probably have a higher pain threshold than a general public user who just looks at stuff, or it doesn't have the strong need for using that infrastructure.
There's probably two things with that one. So one of it is, you know, if you're not a university researcher, don't have particular credentials like Australian Access Federation over here, that sort of thing. So there's the actual accessing, but then there's the discovery layer as well. It's relatively easy for a university researcher to understand what national research infrastructure there might be in whatever country, but actually as a public or industry person, I think if you're not tapped into that, it's probably a lot harder.
So I've tried to capture that in basically for end users 3 things. First of all, how do you, it's actually to some extent fair. So how do you find out about it? How do you know it exists? How do you get access to it? As in, how do you actually have the credentials if needed? How easy is it to establish your credentials? For a naturalist, it's fairly easy, but there are others where it's not. And how easy is it or was it for you to actually use it? Because again, some are usable by the general public, but only if they have a lot of patience and problem-solving persistence. So yeah, I think that's another aspect there. And I guess that applies to industry as well, because how does industry know about it? How easy is it for an industry user to have the credentials? And also, how easy is it then to use it?
I was just going to add one thing I've added. I think that reuse aspect, or like, will you come back and use this again? That repeat aspect is, and often I think you have that repeat concept on a lot of KPI indicators.
Yeah.
And also, do you have an alternative? I think that you learn a lot through, does another option exist full stop? And that can tell you a lot into, some of those strengths or gaps.
Where do I need to enter that? So basically, will you come back and do you have alternatives? And that's basically for all end users? Okay.
I think a question that could lead to the increase of uptake is, and one of the things that have been really successful with Biosecurity Commons is they've used the expertise of their staff, the technical and the scientific expertise that support that infrastructure to develop use cases with other researchers in government. And that's led to further uptake, because while they've done them separately and then introduced them to the platform or the infrastructure later on for general users to use, it then leads to a whole group of other users that tap into it. So, I mean, surveying industry, government, researchers and asking them that question, you might discover some of those.
Yep. And one thing I just put there is for the DRI providers, how do you engage with your users, both prospective and existing? And so I know, for example, with the Biosecurity Commons, the project the food security project that I mentioned earlier about biosecurity, they've spent a very much of an effort connecting with the chief veterinary officers and their teams in different states, and talking to them and showing them what they are planning to do and how that could help. And they're coming up with simulation exercises to show, what could the kinds of problems you could address with this and how you could do that, and also capturing the requirements. So what do you actually need at that point in time as a chief veterinary officer? What do you want to do? What data do you have? What data do you need? What tools do you need? And things like that. Because a lot of the time, I think, so let's take one step back. Personally, I think the whole let's build something and people will come is just not a good idea. So you want to really start with the potential users and with different user groups and work out, okay, what do you actually need? What can we do? And not just build something because it does cool simulations, but isn't usable, or is just too hard, or is just, not meeting the needs of the people you want to use it. So I haven't been up at the top for a while. So there's a whole range of questions. Yep. So we will bring the end users together and have different subcategories under them, including researchers. Okay. Yeah, do you have other options? That was your comment. Yeah, thanks. And that is also another thing. If there are 20 research infrastructures that all do the same thing, is that a good thing? Presumably not. So how do you actually make sure that there are enough infrastructures, plural, for people to do what they need to do, but not a proliferation that just basically fragments the community and the usage? So yeah. Someone put in institutional KPIs linked to DRI activities. Do you want to elaborate on that, Amani? Just a sec with the microphone, sorry. Otherwise, the people online can't hear.
Hi, yeah, my name's Amani. I'm part of ARDC. The reason why I included that is because I work with a lot of research support staff too, and institutionally they do have KPIs that they have to uphold. Yeah, and I'm just wondering if within the surveys, whether it's something worth asking and seeing if that could be used as a measure to uptake, because it could be something as, you know, they have to do certain things around DRI. Yeah, and just using that as a measure as well.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, for policymakers, is the DRI informing your policy? That is, I think, really sort of at the more impact-y kind of end of it. Yeah. Yeah, support and cost models for access for DRI funders, yes. What criteria, yeah, don't we all want to know that? Which criteria do you use to decide to provide support to a DRI? Yes, that's good. Okay, how are you measuring conversion rates from training to use to effective use? So basically, if you train 500 people and 3 people then use the infrastructure, that's probably indicative that that might not be the most efficient or effective training. Does your training require access to the systems? Does this create barriers to DRI use? Okay. How do you, for providers, how do you ensure you reach the right users? Yeah. And how do you determine who are the right users, maybe even before that? Trish, is there anything from Françoise? Excellent, thanks. Oh, from Andrew, by the way, yeah. Do we actually know how, if it's just Françoise and Andrew online?
I only see those.
Okay, so if there's anyone else, please feel free to put your name into the Q&A online in the app, just so we know who we've got. And in fact, yeah, if you're joining online, please put your name into the collaborative notes. So I'm just seeing, oh God, that is a long document. Oh, we have Brian Collier as well from the AHW online. Yep, there's a couple more people online, seems good. Yep, there's a comment here, some or all of the questions for policymakers may also apply to government, yes. I think we'll have to think about how we structure the survey, because people can have multiple roles or multiple personas, if you like, and some of them are, we would want to ask quite similar questions, so we'll have to think quite carefully about how we structure the survey. If anyone here is good at that sort of thing, we'd love to hear from you, because I'm personally not. Okay, so for integration of DRI into research workflows, what are the challenges to integrating DRI into your research workflows? Yes, how do you integrate it? Have you ever provided advice on the development of DRI in your role as an end user? yeah, that would be good. How much workaround is needed to integrate workflows? Have you ever provided advice? Yeah. Yeah, questions on collaboration data sharing. So one of the things we've come across in a health and medical context has been gaining access to data from different sources or in different DRIs. So I think there's probably a question potentially around that. If you use multiple DRIs, how do you actually handle that, and how difficult is that? Because basically, I think the questions at the moment are focusing on one sort of the use of one DRI, but if you're using multiple, I think that adds a whole level of, oh, now I have to have an account here, an account there, I have to have permissions to access this data there, permissions to access that data there, and how do I actually handle all of that? So that could be a question around that as well. Yeah. So production of research outputs, yeah, the questions are, I think, mainly for the researchers, the people who produce research outputs, which makes sense. Does it help to accelerate the production of research outputs? If so, in what ways? Yeah, you can include the usual publication metrics. Sorry, Emma, I'm going to ask you something. So when we talk about research output, a lot of the time we talk about articles, papers, that sort of thing. Now, you're involved in the non-traditional research outputs group as well. So you are?
Well, I read for the first time.
Okay, sorry. Oh, fair enough. Okay, so or if anyone else is here who knows about non-traditional research outputs, how would that work with a digital research infrastructure? Like, would that actually be something where you want to, at this point, go beyond publications in our questions, or the usual publication and traditional research outputs things? Kelsey?
Oh, thanks, Emma. Kelsey Drukin, Access NRI. A big one for us that's becoming very, very relevant and important is the software publication or the software products. Yep. And that's, more and more sitting, alongside the, the data outputs as well as the journal. So I think that's a really critical one that is becoming very common.
Yep. Okay. So I guess the question there is, first of all, what kinds of research outputs does the DRI help you produce, and then take it from there. Emma?
Yeah, I'm not sure you necessarily have to say publication. You could just say research outputs to try and I know that there's a move towards stepping away from the non-traditional research output language. So if we just try and keep it more inclusive, it might be.
Yeah, so, okay, what I was trying to do was I was trying to not just mentally think of publications as research outputs, but of other things as well. And yes, advice on how we would word that would be much appreciated. Zerka?
All I was going to say as well is that obviously there's multiple ways that DRI can be utilised for things like artworks and music compositions and all sorts of things beyond publications.
Thanks.
I think that it is important that the digital research infrastructure really supports digital research output, and that is not only publications, but it has to be supporting it, not pushing, but supporting this movement.
Yep. Yep, thanks.
Very hard to, Ryan McAllister, sorry, very hard to map, but increasingly we don't look at publications, we look at impact, so we do impact pathways. So those sort of vignettes that have got nothing to do with publications at all are the critical thing for us.
Yep.
So if you can crack that one, let us know.
Okay, cool. Okay, if...
Dissemination is a good term that you can use to, that it doesn't necessarily involve any type, including publication, but it makes more general. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, thanks. So we have about another 2 or 3 minutes on this, and then we'll wrap up the session if that's okay. But feel free to add any further comments, questions, suggestions afterwards. So we will definitely look at that probably early next week rather than just take it as it is right now. So if you have anything else to add, by all means, if you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and think, hey, I should have asked that, put it in. Oh, sorry, I didn't see you.
Hi, Stefanie. Sorry, apologies, I came in late in the day. So I'm a little bit back
sorry,
on this.
Can you just introduce yourself?
So Steve McEachran, UK Data Service, previously Australian Data Archive. Who was the survey for? Aside from running a DRI, I also am a survey researcher. I'm a little bit concerned about who are you targeting to actually complete this? Because there's a lot going on here that this is not one survey, it seems to me. Yeah.
So the idea we had at some point was to target the different personas that we've identified. So basically have a survey where you select at the start what personas you fulfill, and we would put a bit of context around it, not what persona do you fulfill in any context, because that's not good, but thinking about a specific digital research infrastructure and saying, okay, so what, or a use case, what personas do you fulfill for that, and then have some questions. Now, I think what we will have to do is, apart from looking through this and sort of consolidating some of the questions, I'm starting to think we will probably have a survey and then possibly also try to do some follow-up interviews rather than just trying to ask everything in the survey. But we would like to have some things that we think would be useful. And it might be actually, one thing we could do is pull out the questions and say, okay, we might have to limit it to a certain number of questions. Which are the top ones we should ask? Which are the ones that we should put into a semi-structured interview and then recruit people for those from different areas and different personas. Does that make sense?
It does. My quick suggestion here would be to reverse that order.
Okay.
Use the semi-structured interviews to help you narrow down and target what you get in the interviews. Because that'll really help, I think, with sort of the design itself.
That sounds good, but but we would try to capture like people with different personas, basically not quite representative, but okay, cool, great. Okay, we're nearly at the end of the session, and I'll see if I can do what I wanted to do. Are we back? We are back. Okay, so just to wrap up the session, so we will spend a bit of time over the next couple of weeks digesting all your valuable input, tidying up the notes a bit, and briefing our colleague Kylie, and writing some of this up in a more digestible format and separating out the things that we want to do and how we want to do them, so that it's not just in one big document, and send those around to the group. So if you haven't joined our group yet and are interested in this topic, please join us. Log in. You have to be logged into the Research Data Alliance website, so if you're not a member, you can register for it. It doesn't cost anything. And then once you're logged into the website, you can go to our group page, and there should be a green join button once you're logged in on the right side. I had to fake this because I am a group member, so I had to stick a green button over it, but that's what it should look like. If you struggle with that, send us an email. Our contact details are on the next slide. As we've mentioned before, we're also looking for interest group co-chairs, so if you're interested in joining the three of us as co-chairs, by all means let us know. I have to say, sorry to be exclusionary, but I think probably not if you're an ARDC member. I mean, if you're an ARDC staff member, come and talk to us. But we really, really would like people from other organizations and other countries, ideally, because we do have a specific mindset And we really need a broader, more diverse group of people. So, but even if you're an ARDC member, please join the group. ARDC staff member, you're very welcome to join the group. Okay, and that is pretty much it. Thank you very much for all your valuable contributions, and we hope to meet some of you in further group meetings. Thank you very much.